What was your worst experience from dating apps? My husband refusing to stop using them. I'm single now. Recently on Tinder, I saw a profile that was just a black square for a profile pic and one letter for the name. The description read, "Please don't swipe yes on me. I'm just trying to catch my husband on here again." My ex-GF used a dating app right in front of me and made the excuse, "I'm just doing it to judge other people on here." Unsurprisingly, she cheated on me later on. I matched with a goth girl who seemed really down to earth. Profile seemed normal and everything, so I swiped and we matched. Everything went well and we decided to meet at the park and walk our dogs. Her dog went to shit, so I handed her one of my baggies to pick it up. She barehanded her dog's shit and carried it about 20 feet to the trash can and wiped her hands on the back of her jeans. I made sure not to let her touch me for the rest of the time. Holy shit, who even does that? I was catfished. I thought she was legit, and we talked for months. I went to go visit her, and it was a guy, claiming to be her best friend, and she had to run to pick up a friend who was drunk. The woman in the profile never returned, and he was trying his best to get in my pants. I matched with my oldest cousin's daughter that I hadn't seen for about 20 years. Didn't recognize her until we started talking. Then we both had the same, "God, this is awkward," moment when we realized the fact. We went and saw After Earth. She spent a considerable amount of time moaning about how she wanted to fuck Jaden Smith, who I'm pretty sure was like 12 years old in the movie. We were both in our early 20s at the time. The whole damn thing, honestly, ghosting, cheating. Pretty sure the only thing I have gotten out of this whole experience is depression, trust issues, and budding alcoholism. I have no clue why I bother continuing to try. I feel this one. I've spent the last year plus fixing everything I felt I needed. I've got confidence. I lost 70 pounds. I'm in the best shape I've been in, have a good career and am comfortable. I have my hobbies and everything the internet and society says I need. My only experience so far is silence. The few matches I get mostly go no response. Even on Bumble they don't send the first message. I've tried premium editions of Tinder, OkCupid, Hinge, Bumble to nothing. I bought the fucking pear ring. I wore it everywhere. I spent every weekend for months going out, bars, shows, farmers markets, the like. Nothing. I literally feel broken. Like my 4 closest friends are married women, and I've asked them for all the advice in the world and they have been monumental in my growth. But even they're left saying I need to move out of this city. This shit is frustrating, and if I hadn't been in semi-happy relationships before, this would probably be far more hurtful. Like I couldn't imagine dealing with this, and have never been in a relationship before. It would be soul-crushing. I'm a snack, end of story. I know my worth. I'm confident myself and proud of myself, but I just don't know what to do anymore. Getting catfished. One girl used images from 15 years ago and lied about her age and £200. On the other hand, I did meet my wife on Tinder and we have 2 kids, been married 6 years. Yeah, I had a much fatter than the picture one. I guess that's routine, though I don't get the mindset of like nobody will notice. My worst was a woman getting either master's or PhD in early childhood education. Like more a researcher than hands-on in the trenches. Still felt a little creepy as it became increasingly apparent she really did not like children. Then she low-key implied I was gay. Probably the clothes. Though I think steel grey chenille mock turtleneck not quite in chaps over rainbow Speedo territory. So I sashayed away to do something more enjoyable, like suck a huge dick. Just how they kinda grind away at your soul or self-esteem. Exactly this. And then in my experience you get a match and get excited just for the timer to run out. I deleted Bumble yesterday. I'm done. Gay Japanese dating app. Met a guy who was oddly excited I had a car. Asked if I could stop by somewhere for him, thought it was minor. 3 places later realized he was just using me for the car to move and pick up stuff. Honestly, meeting people who I vibed well with and could really see myself dating, only to eventually find that it just wasn't there. It turns out that's a lot harder than the standard dating app bullshit. Really makes you question whether you will find it. I met a girl on Tinder. She seemed cool and was pretty hot. First date. Driving her to a local restaurant, she proceeds to rip a loud fart in my car and then starts laughing like a maniac. Meeting a girl, and after I felt uncomfortable around her I went home. I dunno. It was an extremely uncomfortable experience with things she said to me and how she behaved. I was upfront with how I felt. She then found me on a bunch of other social media platforms and kept messaging on all those. Freaked me out. Girl in picture looked normal. We met in person and she had no teeth. Seems weird that teeth in a picture is a prerequisite now. I struck out on a date so fast I got the same Uber driver for my ride home. Oh man. I have a few. I drove 2 hours to a date to get stood up by a salmon fisherman. A firefighter with a big Darth Vader tattoo, who was the spitting image of Jeffrey Dahmer, told me he couldn't get off in the bedroom unless I let him drag me around the house by my hair. A heavily bearded Jewish surfer met me for coffee and called me fat. I am not. A red-haired Russian man who continually referenced the Ukrainian uprising in disgust and carried a vintage six-shooter as his EDC nearly set his bedroom on fire with a candle while we watched Airplane and shotgunned vodka. An alcoholic with a big hole right in the middle of his kitchen floor told me my Spanish was terrible. Granted, my Spanish sucks. I was stood up by a shredded engineer, and had a short romp with a pile driver who insisted his cows were too smart to eat the poisonous plants that grew all over their field. There was a bodybuilder who told me that guns couldn't stop him from doing anything he wanted, that he was simply too strong to be affected by bullets. Then, icing on the cake, I got ghosted by a train conductor with a nose ring whom I had dated for 2 entire months. That joke writes itself somehow. That was a new low for me. So when's the Netflix special coming out? I got catfished, but it was more so she was using older pics. I stayed for the coffee date and had a lovely conversation. But when it was time to go, she lunged at me and went for a kiss. She missed mostly and we just kind of said nothing and parted ways lol. She was a virgin. I didn't know. She turned the lights off. It looked like a murder scene after. I dated someone a long time ago. That guy didn't want to use a condom the first time we had sex, because he wants to fill me with his babies. Yikes. So it stopped right there and I never saw him again. And one who seemed different than the pictures and only talked about himself. Other dates were thankfully fine or great. Ugh. I was catfished. He took photos from strategic angles and lighting that implied he was taller and more muscular and lied about his height, several inches. He ended up being a totally thin dude that weighed maybe 90 pounds and shorter than me. I think he was 5 feet 3 inches that didn't even live in the country. Yup. He was just visiting and he never mentioned it until the date even though we talked for about 2 weeks. Also horrible driver, didn't speak much English. He was using Google to text and translate. I made do with Spanish since he mainly spoke Portuguese, but even then he was horrible at making conversation. It was absolute silence unless I asked something. Also, we get to the restaurant, he invited me for dinner and drinks, and said he wasn't hungry and didn't want to drink. So I say fuck that I'm eating cus I'm starving and I am inhaling my food so we can leave, but as I am just about done he says he's now hungry and would like a drink. Took about 4 trips of the server coming back and answering questions for him to just get the same drink and entree I ordered. At the end of the meal he said he forgot his wallet, then asked me if I wanted to get dessert afterwards and have a second date. Like, excuse me. Got ghosted after I thought we had a great night. She hit me up after a few weeks saying she had been so busy. I guess her other option didn't work out either. LMAO. Shit, I have an weird one. Went on a first date with a girl off Hinge. 5 minutes into the date, she was already talking about her past cocaine addictions and showing me her scars from attempting suicide. She pointed to people at the bar and would be like, "I've gotten all of them to buy me drinks before," and then said that she couldn't wait to drain my wallet at fancy restaurants. At this point, I was very not into my date and was just looking forward to it being over. In hindsight, I absolutely should have just ended the date, but since there was food next door and I was hungry, we then got some food. At one point, we both went to the bathroom. When we both came back, our waitress said something like, "Oh, there you are. I thought you might have just left mid-meal." My date then nearly started a scene by claiming that the waitress was being racist at her for insinuating that we weren't gonna pay our bill. Luckily she relaxed, but then got way too relaxed and started to slightly loudly sing about her, and I quote, hairy butthole. I really wish she hadn't done that. When we left the restaurant, she walked over to all the dinner tables and blew out the candles. When I asked why she did so, she said that she disassociated and couldn't remember doing that. Now, this would have been the perfect time to get the fuck out, but I was a pushover and let her convince me to swing by her house 2 to 3 blocks away to say hi to her cats before leaving. On the way there, she needed to pee and literally dropped her fucking pants and pissed all over the public sidewalk and her shoes. No hesitation. Just piss. I was speechless. I still can't believe how weird and uncomfortable the whole night was. The last insane part of the night was when, after seeing her cats briefly and then using the restroom, she attempted to naked woman me. It was so fucking awkward and she lost her shit when I clearly wanted to leave. She said, and I quote, "You're just going to leave me like everyone else in my life." So yeah, that's probably my worst. The overwhelming amount of people with Asian fetish in Northwest Ohio. The amount of times I've been sexualized and infantilized is insane. Doesn't help that I look way younger than my age and is 5 feet 2 inches. It goes for a lot of things. I'm 22 and look really young. Like I could legitimately pass as a 12 to 14-year-old. I was so sexualized because of it. You would think the LGBT community would be better. But it's just as bad. Regularly girls would come up to me in the lesbian bar and ask if I wanted to be a good girl for mommy. Oh boy, this should be a whole new subreddit. Answer: nearly half of them were the worst. The consequences of being a 5 feet 7 inches dude. Tell yourself whatever cope makes you feel better. I'm 6 feet 7 inches. Over the course of 3 years of swiping in university, I got 10 matches, 3 responded to messages before ghosting, and I got 0 dates. Height isn't a cure for a garbage personality and a lack of social skills. I speak from experience. I met this girl on Bumble who seemed really sweet and we clicked super well at first. She told me that she was stuck in a lease with her ex, who she broke up with a couple months before, but she was trying to move back in with her mother. I wasn't thrilled, but I was thinking, whatever, it's not her fault. A week later I had lost my virginity to her, and a couple days after that I got a text from her telling me that she had a wonderful time with me but that she realized she was still in love with her ex. Apparently I made her feel like her old self, and that included being in love with a man who started dating her when she was 17 and he was 26. Stupidly, I gave her a chance to make up her mind and she said she would pick me even though her brain told her not to. However, the final straw was that she insisted on staying friends with him and that I was controlling for not wanting to date her if she would do that. Hooked up with a guy who didn't disclose he had herpes until a couple hookups in. Literal 0 response from anyone ever. I had a great first date with a girl from Tinder. She was super happy to set up a second date for later that week, and was sending me memes and chatting until the night before. The day of, she decides to stand me up in below freezing weather without warning. I was texting her asking where she was, and I could see her come online just to ignore me. Besides that, probably the multiple matches who would agree to a date, cancel the day before, pretend to be interested in rescheduling the date, and then drag out the process for weeks until I gave up and unmatched. Interested people will make time for you. 99.9% of the time, no one is busy for weeks on end. This happened to a friend of mine. Matched with a girl and not too long after they agreed to meet up and have coffee. Meets her at this cafe, and she pulls out a tablet pretty much right after they sit down and order. She starts a presentation about some dodgy pyramid scheme. My poor mate was too polite to say anything. He sat through the whole thing, politely declined and even paid for the bill. Never heard from her again. In a list. 1. They lied about not being on medication, manic. They needed bail money because of resisting charges. Nope. 2. Lead about children. Had 2 and 1 on the way, 4 months. Bio dad got deported and she didn't want to go back to her country. I understood her situation but too much baggage for the first date. 3. Proudly displayed shush scars and described why they were done. Some due to exes. NOPED out. 4. Said an emotional relationship to marriage needed to happen within 6 months. A little fast but seemed like the norm in the family. I can't put a time frame on it, but she was fixated on it. Left before getting attached. 5. Lead about gender identity. I get it, honestly, I do. But no one likes being led on only to be put in an on-off scenario, and then I am deemed the bad guy for not wanting to support the decision. Very confusing time, to be honest. Went full cold turkey. 6. Wanted everything income-based, requested criminal record, must have 800 credit score, wanted only to be a SATM, wanted a drafted will within the first year. Hell NOPED so fast. 7. Never said a word during the first date, not even a reaction. Hard to read the room and keep a conversation going if they aren't interested. Afterward, I let her know that I enjoyed her company, but I don't think it'll work out. There was plenty of time for her to answer and continue topics, but nope, didn't happen. She got depressed and blamed me for it, according to her mom, who messaged me. I was stunned, to be honest. Weird feeling. 8. She ate half my dinner, plus hers, and I paid for it. I only ate the salad side, which got cold. Wanted another meal to take home. Turns out she was living in her car and used dating apps as meal tickets. Substance abuse is just sad, and baggage was really heavy. Easy call off. She wasn't even bothered and said, "Perfect, this makes it easy then." We went to the biggest coffee place in Munich, Marienplatz. Crowded as fuck as a first date. Wasn't catfished, she looked hot and all, but, we talked for like 3 hours, all great, up until she went on her knees, proposing to me. Creepy. Everyone looked at us and were at first disappointing, angry looking at me for saying obviously no. She rushed out in tears. Had to tell the 100 plus people around me that it was our first date. I've had good experiences, mainly. Many dates. A few long-term girlfriends, including the one now, 3+ years. I'd say one of the worst was going on a normal date only to be blocked immediately after it was done. It was after work in a big city and we had a counter spot at a popular place. Got good drinks, food, discussion, etc. Hugged goodbye after talking about a potential second date of another place we talked about checking out. We had kept discussion in the app rather than swapping phone numbers, so later on in the train ride home I checked and she was gone from the messages. So essentially she blocked me immediately after the date, and that was that. It wasn't like we were meant to be or that I was super into her, but it seems like a pretty bold move just to block me. I also paid for dinner, as I always do on the first date. It was just like, oh okay, guess that's that. I mean, I didn't even necessarily want a second date, but it wasn't like I was going to stalk her or do some weird-ish. I would have just messaged her saying the usual thing like chemistry wasn't there but it was great meeting you and stuff. Like nope, couldn't even do that, just blocked. Honestly, first time I've ever been blocked. So pretty tame, but made me second guess myself on how to proceed with dates. I was on a bit of a roll, having had a few dates every week for about 3 months, and she was near the tail end of that where I was like maybe I should take a break. Thankfully I didn't, and a few weeks later I hit it off with the now girlfriend. Met up in person for a first date and she casually pointed out that her ex loves to come on her boots. Talk about awkward. Never saw her again. Meeting a 42-year-old narcissist after thinking I'm of the age where it would fool me this time. Okay, I got a twofer. This was from OKC, but I don't think which dating site it was matters. I'm chick of the fatter variety, and I always post a current body shot because I don't like people wasting my time if they're not going to be into me. I never got why people post misleading photos, like people aren't going to notice when you meet. So I was talking to this guy, seemed nice enough, and asked me to buy me dinner. Okay, sure. He had only posted a face shot. When we met he was easily clearing over £450. Not really into that, but I stuck it out because he seemed like a nice person. We get coffee first, and then walked over to the restaurant. Now, I'm no athlete, but I do like to hike and rough woods camp. I may not be winning any marathons, but I can walk for miles. This poor dude was wheezing within 20 feet of walking. Clearly it was an effort for him. I felt bad for the guy, and I try to be open-minded, but I can't date someone that unhealthy. We get to the restaurant, which was really good, and he tells me about himself and his life. He told me about his roommate who was dating a crackhead. They would fuck all over the place with the doors open, do all kinds of hard drugs and were just slovenly dicks. He also told me he was a dom and started to imply we could go make out later and he would top me. I said I had to leave after dinner and scooted as soon as it was polite to do so. 6 to 7 months later I try my luck again, this time with a photographer. We got along okay, conversation went well, and in the course of the date he asked me about bad dates I've been on. I brought up the larger guy from before and mentioned the wheezing and the pushing to top me, and he asked if the guy was named XXX. Turns out I was on a date with the guy's roommate. I don't use dating sites anymore. Ghost culture in general, but I do suppose a positive is that it makes the reliable people stand out. Some guy made a profile of Elliot Roger and I swiped out of curiosity. The guy didn't say it was a joke and kept pushing to meet me in person. Using them for 11 years and not getting a single date.